Blog Talk Radio. Have you ever wondered why it's happening again? Welcome to MindShifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rahma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce. And the truth that is rooted within me.
The truth that is rooted within me. Thank you for that tune. What an awesome piece of music. Welcome to MindShifters Radio. My name is Michael Ryce. Jeanie actually is just walking in. She'll be on the show in a moment. We are on the road in the boonies in the middle of Springfield, Missouri. David, Terry, how are you?
Doing good.
Hello,
Michael.
David.
Doing good.
Hello, Terry.
Hello.
Hey there. How are you? I can hear you loud and clear.
Good. I'm doing well.
So how are you today, David?
Oh, you're right.
I know things are running and busy and lots happening.
Yeah, getting ready for the intensive. Looking forward to the return of Dr. Ryce and his wife, Jeanie. And just eager for the intensive to begin. Take you to another level.
Absolutely. And Dr. Tim, how are you this morning? Or pardon me, it's afternoon where you are. It's afternoon where I am now, too. I'm still doing it from out in Oregon, though, in my brain. I'm still in morning time when I do the show.
Well, we're doing quite well here in Illinois. Enjoying life and the challenges it provides for
Illinois?
growth. Pardon me?
Hot in Illinois?
Yep, it's warming up.
Well, it's certainly warm here. Ouch. Well, Jeanie and I are in Springfield, and we're actually doing errands. We literally got up to the door of the place where Jeanie is hooked onto the internet to run the control panel for the show. And you may hear a little bit of background noise. I'm actually in my van and listening to the show, doing the show from the road as we do our final errands to pick up food and all the good stuff we need for our intensives at Heartland. So we're in the big city, and it's hot in Springfield. And Jeanie, are you with us?
I am. There's quite a bit of chatter in the store, so I probably won't do a lot of talking, but I am on.
Okay, well, you sound clear. I don't hear any chatter in the background, so it sounds pretty good, actually. So do we have any topics? Anybody with their hand up that wants to jump in on the phone line? Anything in the chat room yet? Somebody that wants to kick the show off with some ideas about where we're going with forgiveness, where we're going with the celebration of Memorial Day. I think today is day 47.
I think it's day 47.
Memorial Day, and for those who are new to the show, our celebration is about taking responsibility and honoring those who've gone before us in that human insanity called war by taking on whatever it is in us that leads us to war. What hostility or fear are we carrying? And are we willing today, one more time, to face something of hostility or fear and forgive it? And we talk about forgiving it. We're not talking about forgiving somebody else. We're not talking about you forgiving yourself. In the ancient Aramaic language, if you had some form of hostility or fear, something that darkened your mind, you'd be handed a tool with which you would remove the darkness and turn the lights back on. That's called forgiveness. When the Aramaic teachings were translated into Greek, forgiveness became, I have darkness in my mind, but it's all your fault, but it's okay. I'll be big about it. I'll let you off the hook, which, of course, does nothing to change the darkness in me. Forgiveness is about changing the darkness that is in each of us. And, old Paul, he had a good piece of information when he said we see as though through a glass darkly. If hostility or fear is tainting your perception, then you don't see what's happening in the world, you see what's happening in your mind, and of course, you can't change what's happening in your mind. You get to live the title of my book. Why is this happening to me again? And so we invite you to join us in our celebration of Memorial Day. Forgive something in your life today, some form of hostility or fear that perhaps has confused you, bamboozled you, taken control of you, and whatever else might be going on in your world. And let's learn together to remove those things. Questions, thoughts, answers, ideas from anyone?
Not yet.
Michael?
Yes, sir.
You might want to spend a few minutes. I know that I've had conversations with people around energy that's referred to as karma, and that things just kind of happen to us because that's the karma out there. And as I was giving a little explanation of that, I wonder if you might share a little your insights and your thoughts around that. And karma,
okay.
Whether I have my karma and someone else has karma, and that there's a karma energy.
Yeah, well, I used to be a used karma salesman, so I know all about that. I can tell you about it. What is karma? Well, in the Aramaic, they speak about a law called the law of sowing and reaping. And they said, as you sow, you reap. That is, as you put a frequency in, you put a frequency of hostility or fear, and those are just energies into your structure, and guess what? You get to play it out. How do you get to play it out? Well, if you put in, let's say, for instance, you put in hate as a frequency. First of all, a thought, that hatred starts as a thought. That thought produces a molecule in your body called a neuropeptide. That neuropeptide circulates around in your structure until it finds a cell with a receptor site that matches it. It lands on the cell, and the cell replicates the neuropeptide chemically. So the first piece of karma is you're now living with the chemistry, literally in your cellular structure, of your thoughts. That's some pretty heavy-duty karma. So my favorite thought about hate and rage and those sorts of things is to hate another is to take a poison and hope that they will die. Now, that's a thought that's been around for a long time. I don't know who came up with that originally, but it's an awesome piece of information to understand. So that's the first piece of sowing and reaping, the first result of sowing and reaping, darkness. The next result would be that thought of hatred literally it creates by its presence. Frequency is motion on a physiological level. By its very presence, that frequency, that motion, sets up an energy wave. That energy wave was a wave that a fellow named Marcel Vogel, I got to do some work with this awesome intellect and genius spiritual being, Marcel Vogel. He was a 23-year senior scientist from IBM. And he had the instrumentation in the laboratory with which to take a picture of the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought. So the second result of sowing that hatred would be that you set up a literal frequency that calls to anyone who has a similar frequency in the neighborhood. So if there's anybody with hatred in them, and you're walking down the street, minding your own business, not cognizant that last week you put hatred into your field, all of a sudden you walk by somebody and there's a resonance. There's an exchange of energy. They feel something toward you. You feel something toward them. And oftentimes a rageful fight ensues because of the presence of that hatred in two minds. Second piece of karma, or the law of sowing and reaping. And by the way, there'll be those who will object to the word karma. They think that's from some, strange teaching that's other than the teaching they believe in. They believe in sowing and reaping. It's precisely the same word. It's only our ego structures that separate us and say, well, my language is better than your language. It's the same idea. So that would be the second effect of sowing hatred. The next effect would be that when the person who bumps into that energy wave in you does whatever behavior they do, their behavior will tend to fire off that frequency in your cell. It's going to intensify the effect in the cell, and the cell is going to yell out emotionally with a painful signal. So it's going to say, ouch, this hurts. If you look at probably, 70 to 80% of America is addicted, is utilizing addictive drugs. Why? Because there's so much cellular hurt going on, they're trying to anesthetize themselves against that cellular pain. So the next effect is you create and intensify more of the same in your cellular structure. Next level of the process is that as you set up that energy wave and interact with another, that frequency is literally going to build pictures in your mind. It's going to take the frequency of hatred, and it's going to build, of course, if we deny our hatred, which most of us do, they made me so hateful. It's all their fault that I'm hateful. What they did, that's such a hateful thing. It's all their fault. But what will happen then, being in denial of that, I dissociate from that. Then when somebody shows up and resonates those brain cells, I'll build a picture of someone hateful in my mind, and I'll be sure that it must be their hatred when what I'm experiencing, what I'm feeling is totally, completely, 100% my own. So I'm going to have a jaded perceptual mind. We talked 2 days ago about true perception versus just carbon-based memory perception. And I'm going to be locked out of the real world. So there are a lot of effects to this law of sowing and reaping when we hide things from ourselves that never should have been there. Does that make sense? Does that fit for your question, David?
Yeah, I'm just here. Yeah. Yes, and one of the thoughts that I had about that is very clear, and so that when, in that same line of thought, so if there's karma that's passed on generation to generation, our image, it really is about, there's some noise there. It sounds to me like that this is what you refer to when the sins of the father are passed yet 3 and 4 generations, that the karma that is passed on, and when people talk, for some people that believe that they reincarnate and come back and so forth, well, then that's the karma that they are carrying with them. Does that sound accurate?
Well, I don't think that we need to do people who are reincarnated. We reincarnate 10 minutes from now in the same reality if we're not willing to get rid of it, and we reincarnate in it 2 days from now and 2 weeks from now and 2 months from now. And you do bring another good point up. There's another very powerful effect that literally when you put that frequency in, it is stored holographically in every cell in the structure, including the sperm and the egg. And so if you were to conceive a child tomorrow, that child would have in its structure every thought you've ever thought, every feeling you've ever felt, every reality you've ever engaged in. So that same hate is going to be in the cellular structure of the child. And so we see that being passed on. And, why is my child so hateful to me? Well, maybe because I happen to be hiding from myself my own hatred, and they are the one who resonated, the one who shows it to me. And so they give me the gift of the opportunity to forgive, to remove that which never belonged in my structure in the first place. I'll often, one of my favorite tongue-in-cheek lines is that having a child is like having your unconscious mind hanging out in true living color and Dolby sound. Everything you've never dealt with, your children are going to bring up for you. Why? because they're made of the same frequencies as you are. They carry the sowing and reaping of the previous generations.
Okay, and a lot of thoughts are around it, and maybe for listeners, the shifts, and it's one that I work with consciously, is about identifying myself as an energy system, or seeing this body as an energy system, where I can then view things coming from an energetic level versus coming from my carbon-based memory, or from the memories that the unconscious memories. Does that sound accurate?
Yes. Mm-hmm. That would fit.
Okay.
And, the generational idea, I can share a very direct personal experience that I had in that regard. In my life, I've always had fairly good control of my temper, except in one situation. And this is something that I, in the early days of doing this work, I worked on this issue very sincerely for 4 or 5 years. And, I think, I've got that one handled. And 2 weeks later, somebody did something stupid that my brain considered stupid in traffic, and in just a fraction of a second, I could be fish-shaking rageful again over it. And it's like, what is this? And I remember the day my son was about probably 2 and a half. He's kind of hanging on my hip, and this is coming up, and I'm dealing with it. And I'm asking Ruka, that, and for those who are not familiar with that term, it speaks of an elemental force that is in us that will help us to work through these issues. And so in asking, I had this intuitive understanding that this was an inherited anger from my great-great-grandfather. Now, both of my grandfathers were dead by the time I was 6 months of age, so I certainly had no knowledge of my great-great-grandfather. However, I just accepted that information as it was and did some forgiveness work around it, and then had a conversation. Asked my great-great-grandfather to be present and had a conversation with him, and explaining to him that my intuition had suggested, and of course that's one of the 5 smooth stones we talked about the other day, and smooth means you've practiced it. You know when you're on track with your intuition. And so I had a conversation with him, and the conversation went along the lines of, great-great-granddad, I get the sense that this anger is inherited from you, and it's been running my life for too long. I'm ready to be done with it. I'm ready to let this go. So I'm going to release it for myself. It's yours. If that's accurate information, it's yours. If you want it back, please take it. If not, then I release it for both of us and let it loose. I'm ready to forgive this and be done with it. That was not, Michael J. is now 30, in September he's 32. And he was about 2 then, so that's about 30 years ago. And that was an issue after working diligently for about 5 years I hadn't gotten through. That was the last day I had a fish-shaking incident behind the wheel of a car, 30 years ago. I was dealing with the karma, yes, or the sowing and reaping of the generations. To me, it was pretty good verification. Now, is that an absolute necessary fact that be true? Well, that may have just been my creative mind's creative way of explaining to me what it is that I needed to deal with. It really doesn't matter. That's what came up. I dealt with it as it came up, and that was the end of it. And as I say, in 3 decades now, I've not had one of those incidents behind the wheel of a car. So that's for me, it's pretty good verification. And what we're looking to do is to support each person who's listening to our show in being able to develop that level of intuition, being able to forgive, to remove what never belonged, and to move forward more and more as the human beings that we're designed to be, which is the active presence of love, that we are
Michael.
Literally designed to function as. Yes, Jeanie?
Someone in the chat room has something they would like for you to address. It's Joe, and they say, my son Logan is in Parris Island, South Carolina, in Marine boot camp. I'm curious about my thoughts being conflicted in fear and yet in desire for his well-being and mine. So can you address how they can have both the fear and yet the desire for the well-being, and yet there's a conflict within them on that?
Well, of course, it comes from two distinct goals. One goal, I don't know whether it's a mother or a father, but either the maternal or the paternal instinct is to always protect your child. So there's the goal for my child to be safe. And so with that goal, my mind produces images consistent with that idea of the desire to be safe. I produce one set of realities. And then when I have a different goal, and the different goal maybe comes from, my true beliefs about war and training young people to go to war, and my desire for peace in the world, and recognizing that, that you can't fight for peace, that's an oxymoron, although that's one of the games the world plays, is it tells us that, just fight for peace, then I would tend to have a different reality based upon that goal. And that different reality would produce a different and a conflicting image. Sensation in my body would access different brain cells. So my input would be to work on the forgiving. And if you're not familiar with the forgiveness process that we're talking about, I invite you to go to www.whyagain.com. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. The first 3 links under that section are the instructions, an instruction set for the reality management worksheet, the 7-step reality management worksheet itself, and then the third link is for an MP3 of a radio show where we guided a young lady through the forgiveness process. So I would suggest to start forgiving in each arena until you come to a point where you just function as a space of love when you think about that young man being where he is and doing what he's doing. And as that space of safety, you can surround him in a bubble of light to keep him safe, and to keep him safe both on the physical plane, or the so-called physical plane, and on the emotional, mental plane. Just the training that goes into that game is pretty horrendous for the sensibilities of a true human being. One of the standards that I usually offer to people, if you want to get really tapped in, is to think about a particular situation, and if there's a behavior that a newborn child would not do, then probably we shouldn't be doing it. And as you recognize that, then to hold the space of your son being able to ward off any frequencies of hostility, fear, or damage that might be purposely inflicted by those who are training him, and or by the duties that he will be required to carry out. So that would be some of my input, and I'd certainly, if you would like to chat about that issue, I'd be happy if you wanted to call us. Our phone number is 646-200-4169, and I would be glad to give you some other input if you have some other refinements or questions in the process, and or if that adequately addresses it. Wonderful. We're just here as a space of support for you. Tim, David, do you have any thoughts? David having been to Vietnam, and Tim having worked with Vietnam vets and vets from the Gulf War and such, do you have any thoughts or any input for our question in the chat room there?
Well, when you were referring to the idea of having the goals as a parent of keeping a child safe, and also the things that get triggered by the visualizations of what war is really like, then certainly those conflicts that are in there And I talked about on the show once before that my mother had said to me years later after I returned from Vietnam that I was not the same son that had gone over there. And
yeah, that's for sure.
Had not, huh?
That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I've done my work, and one of my sons actually went into the Air Force. It's been about 10 years ago, and he went to Afghanistan and he went to Iraq on a couple of tours, and he had done some healing work prior to going over there, and we had some in-depth conversations about what he could expect and how to resolve things. And he expressed to me that by the information that I'd give him and the work that I had done and the support that was offered to him, that I had offered him as a parent, then it was the thing that really did keep him from going insane while he was over there, of really buying into the whole game. And I call it a game because it is a ludicrous game, and it's still the way that it's played. And I think to this day that just changed and shifted everything for him in his service. So my invitation to the caller is just to go to the website, gather the information, begin doing his or her work, and open the space for sharing that information with their son, whoever that may be. That would be my support of it. And anyone that has any questions or thoughts around about war and as far as participating in it, and I am a former combat veteran, and I would be glad to share my thoughts and perspectives around that.
Awesome.
We
Great.
do have a hand up on the phone.
Awesome. Cool. Let's go for it.
Area code 828. You're on the air. Area code 828.
And this meal is one I love for them. This is actually whole wheat pasta with tomato basil sauce. A tremendously healthy dinner, right? But keep in mind this sauce has 12 to 12.
Please listening to somebody else. Let's cut that one off.
Well, I'm trying, but my computer's now frozen up. So.
That's going to kill 31 grams of sugar. You're supposed to have.
All right, I'll try them again in a minute.
If you can hear me, you're on the air.
So take all these meals together, 150 grams of added sugar.
Area code 828, you have another TV show or something going on, but you're on the air.
This is where you make smart decisions.
Okay, I'll put them on mute.
Okay. Oh, what fun. Okay. So, Tim, from your work, and David, thank you for that input. That's an awesome idea. You know, one of the things you might want to do with your son who's in that military training, you know, the whole idea of a cult. If you go back and look at our codependence work, we did several workshops or several radio shows on codependence. And one of the things we talk about is a power person. And the idea of a cult is to get people to shift power persons. And basically, the power person dynamics run people's lives, and cults work toward making a person adopt a new power person. And basically, that's what the military does, is it forces the adaptation to a new power person. So the behaviors demanded by that power person then become those that run one's life. Give your son the tools. I might suggest the DVD of Why Is This Happening to Me Again and the Codependence to Interdependence video. Might be two things you might want to order and send to him to give him some of the tools to shield him from those dynamics and allow him to stay conscious. I know that there have been different types of workshops around that are kind of cult-like or cultish, and I know that years ago there was one in particular. I worked with several people who had been engaged in what might be considered a cult, switching power persons. And what I came to understand after working with several people was there were some people who were able to go through it with no ill effects. In fact, they actually benefited from it. But then there were those who went through it and they were shattered. They went into a particular, type of workshop in order to deal with an issue in their lives. And the analogy I came up with was that it was like there was a window frame in the back bedroom that needed to be painted. And they dynamited open the front door in order to get back there. And so oftentimes those brainwashing types of things are really designed to take over a person's mind. And if one is equipped with the tools to take charge of their own minds, it's not so easily done. And so giving him the tools to be able to shield himself from any potential damaging effects might be really powerful, because it's certainly the traumatic things that are done to the vet or the young man in training, young woman in training, and then the things they are forced to do and see should never be presented in a human life. It's bizarre that we live in a world where it happens, and that's why we're celebrating Memorial Day to honor those who've been through all of that, that we might end the dynamic of war on planet Earth by each taking responsibility for our own hostilities and fears and working through them. And as we do, all we need is a critical mass of people who will do that, and we're going to change the game on planet Earth. We're here to change that game. Jeanie, any other comments in the chat room from the person who was asking that question?
No other comments there. And area code 828 did dial back in, but it was Magda, and she said she didn't mean to press 1, that she's listening as she's heading out somewhere. So she really didn't. So she's just out there listening. Welcome, Magda. We look forward to seeing
welcome,
you.
Magda. We're glad you're here.
So she's just listening.
Well in your world. Hope you're driving toward Heartland. Anyway, any other comment in the chat room?
There's no other question. No, there's not.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go to Tim and see if he has any input, being a psychologist and having worked with vets and worked in that arena. Tim, do you have any input for the parent who's dealing with that issue?
Well, I'd say the first thing is to echo what both you and David have said, and then come back to one of your points, Michael, which is that since everything is energy and intention is so powerful, to work with anyone who has a loved one who's in the service, to get them to send that energy of love, to hold them in that space and envision them as being protected and I think you said in a bubble of light, because
absolutely,
because there's so much that's come up in my work with veterans where they have discovered after the fact that they could feel emotional swings during their deployment, and they didn't really know exactly why. And then later, comparing notes with family members, they would find out that it was directly related to times when there was a lot of disruption at home, or one of the family members at home was going through a deep depression because they were worried about their family member who was a soldier or in the service. So the more I can do to keep my energy in a loving, or the focus on my loving nature, and extend that to my friends and family, the better we all are. And that's all I would offer.
Absolutely. Yeah, excellent point. There's an awesome statement in the ancient scriptures that says you can walk through a battlefield where 1,000 or 10,000 will die, and you can't be touched if you're in harmony with me. So first line of defense would be to teach this young person to remove all hostility and fear from them, even though their training will try to put that hostility or fear into them. That makes them a target. It makes them, aggressive enough to want to kill somebody, which of course is why they're training them. But at the same time, that aggressive energy is what draws someone who would kill. And so to teach them to function out of their human lives, and of course, for those who might be new to the show, we define a human life very, very simply. Hold a newborn child, and you know exactly what a human life is. teach your young person who's going through that training, certainly a challenge. It will be an exercise. But to maintain the condition and connection to the love that they are as they do whatever it is that they're being trained to do, and they will create that safety and that security that will keep them safe in all circumstances. And we join in holding the space, not only for the young man or the young woman that you're speaking of, but for every person that is deployed around the world. And I mean every person deployed around the world. I don't care whether it's Iraqi or Iranian or Korean or Chinese or American. We are one body. It's time for us to get over this whole game of separation. Go see the film I Am. It's awesome. I don't know if it's showing in the regular theaters anymore. It came out and it went fairly fast where we were, but get a hold of that film and watch it. And apply Einsteinian physics to this. Here's what Einstein says. He says, if you think you're separate or separated from the rest of humanity, you're living in an optical delusion. We don't need safety for Americans. We need safety for all persons on planet Earth. We need responsibility for all persons on planet Earth. We need healing and forgiveness for all persons on planet Earth. That's when the dynamic of war is going to change. So let's invoke a blessing for all in the service, that they all realize who they are. And as you realize who you are, guess what? You're going to stop doing war. War is going to disappear. There's another fabulous movie out there called Joyeux Noel. Joyeux Noel, it's a French title. And it's a true story based on an event that happened in 1917 in the fields of France, where on Christmas Eve, a German soldier sings out a Christmas carol. The Brits respond with the Christmas carol in English, and before long they find themselves with truce flags, calling it truce for Christmas Eve, and walking out onto the battlefield, exchanging pictures of home.
Breathing.
Yeah, I am. It's so bizarre what we're doing.
Breathing.
So these men become protectors of each other rather than murderers of each other.
At which point the governments had to take them off the battlefield and put in new divisions of military who hadn't made friends with each other so they could continue the battle.
Yeah, and the German soldiers, they sent them to the front line in Russia to be slaughtered because they were of no use anymore. They were not men anymore, according to the German military. And there's a powerful scene where a priest who's American, or pardon me, is English, I believe, Scottish, is defrocked because he dared to say Mass on Christmas Eve for gathered soldiers of all who are all of the same faith, by the way, convinced by their governments to kill each other.
Yeah, they all knew the Mass. They all knew the Mass in Latin, and they all celebrated together and then went back to their trenches, and their governments ripped them apart and sent them to different places, some to be slaughtered, some to be redeployed in other areas.
Yeah. Yeah, it's time for a change on planet Earth, for sure.
Well, let me just go ahead, Jeanie.
I was just going to say, if you go to our website, www.whyagain.com/share, SHARE.PHP. At the bottom of that, there are three things about that movie, and it was a true story. The first is, and it's called Christmas in the Trenches. You can listen to the NPR story, you can read the words to the song, or you can listen to John McDermott sing it. So all three of those links are on that share site on our website, too.
It's time for we humans to start to treat each other like humans again. This insanity, this slaughter's got to stop.
And the other thing I would add, coming back to an earlier discussion in today's show, David was asking about the idea of karma, and you talked about Marcel Vogel's work, taking a picture of a high-energy wave that leaves my mind when I think a thought. And the best that I've gathered from several different sources about this that are all similar is that I have the infinite capacity to choose the focus of my conscious awareness. And even though ripples come out from others who are thinking angry or hurtful or fearful thoughts, and they do have an energy that I can become aware of, I have the infinite capacity to choose to focus my awareness on my source as love. And in that, whether there are millions or trillions of people thinking angry or hurtful thoughts, I have the infinite capacity to focus my conscious awareness on my source as love. And when I discuss that in the group, sometimes people have a hard time with it, so I use the analogy of a 10-mile-an-hour wind coming from the south to the north, and it's the end of the workday and I need to go home, and I live 10 miles south of here. Well, I can certainly feel the wind in my face if I'm walking, and it may take me a little bit more energy to walk the 10 miles home. I can certainly feel it if I'm riding my bike. I might go a little slower. It might even cost me a little bit extra in gas to go against a 10-mile-an-hour headwind as I drive home. But to end up 10 miles north of where I started and blame it on the wind is absolute insanity, because the wind is no more causing me to go where I choose to go than someone else's thought is causing me to feel what I feel.
Right. And Tim, I'm sitting in my van, so I don't happen to have it with me, but do you happen to have the book with the story about that attorney in the concentration camps and what they found with him? That would actually be awesome to share right at this moment.
Yeah.
And if you happen to have
that's called The Gentle Art of Blessing.
Right.
And the story is about a gentleman that they
called
Wild Bill. Pardon me?
Do you by chance have it there?
Yes. Yeah.
I'll tell you what. While you're looking it up, let me just share quickly a little poem about wind. It's actually a sailor's tale, and it goes like this: one ship goes east, the other west, on the self-same winds that blow. 'Tis the set of the sails and not the gales that determine the way she goes. Which way do you want to go? And, of course, by utilizing the tools, we're looking to strengthen the faculties and the ability to make those choices. And then stick to our highest choices rather than get lost in lower choices when the stress is up and the chips are down.
Excellent. Well, I have that story if you want me to relay it.
If you would, it's so awesome. It's so powerful. I don't know if I think I shared this with you, Tim, but when we did the reality management worksheet and the forgiveness workshop in the Holocaust Museum in Fort Lauderdale, we shared this story, and it was just so heart-wrenching in that environment. But please share it with us.
Dr. George G. Ritchie was a doctor with the American troops in World War II, and he took part in the liberation of the Holocaust victims in Nazi Germany. He explains that he became acquainted with a Polish prisoner in a camp near Wuppertal. The man was a lawyer with an unpronounceable name, so they nicknamed him Wild Bill Cody. He was named this because of his drooping handlebar mustache and long hair. Wild Bill radiated health, shining bright eyes, and an erect posture with boundless energy. So Ritchie assumed he'd been brought to the camp shortly before liberation. He was fluent in a number of European languages, and Wild Bill became an unofficial camp translator, helping the Americans with their numerous tasks. Despite the 15 and 16-hour days with a staggering workload, he never showed any signs of weariness. His compassion for the other inmates was endless. Every ethnic group in the camp, between whom there were numerous hate-filled antagonisms, all looked upon him as a friend. So Dr. Ritchie was dumbfounded the day he learned that the Polish lawyer had been in the camp since 1939. He was a medical miracle, totally unexplainable in medical terms, at least at that time. For 6 years, he had lived in a disease-ridden barracks, eaten unidentifiable food, survived in conditions under which thousands of others had died or been reduced to skeletal vestiges of humanity. One day, over a cup of tea, Wild Bill told Richie his story. At the beginning of the war, he'd been living in the Warsaw Ghetto with his wife and 5 children. One day, the Nazis arrived on their street, lined everyone up against the wall except the lawyer, because he spoke German and could be useful to them, and they opened fire with their machine guns, killing everyone, his wife and 5 children included. Right in front of his eyes, Wild Bill's family was gunned down. In vain, Wild Bill pleaded to be shot with his family. He paused telling this story, perhaps seeing his wife and 5 children again, and he said, quote, "I had to decide right then whether to let myself hate the soldiers who had done this. It was an easy decision, really. I was a lawyer. In my practice, I had seen too often what hate could do to people's minds and bodies. Hate had just killed the 6 people who mattered most to me in the world. I decided then that I would spend the rest of my life, whether it was a few days or many years, loving every person I came in contact with."
Powerful proclamation of claiming your human life.
And powerful results. The wind may blow in any direction, but it's the set of the sails that determines where we go. And we have the infinite capacity to choose the focus of that conscious awareness. So please, for all those who are listening, choose love. Choose to teach only love and extend the love that you're made of into the world.
You mean like teach only love, for that is what you are?
Exactly.
My goodness. You sound like you've been reading the Course in Miracles.
Way of Mastery, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think same author. Same author.
Same author. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that story once again. That's it's a powerful reminder. Jeanie, do we have any questions in the chat room or online? Our phone number, by the way, if you do have a question, if this stirs anything up for you, we would love to hear from you. And our phone number is 646-200-4169. Please give us a call.
Michael, for the gentleman in the chat room, Joe, we should mention that book, The Gentle Art of Blessing.
Yes.
Because along with your worksheet processes and MindShifters, this is a very nice tool for sending that loving energy. So The Gentle Art of Blessing by Pierre Pradervand, Pradervand. And Joe, if you're still there listening, I hope you find that book as useful as I have.
Yeah, I found it on eBay. There were lots of people selling it on eBay. It is an awesome book, awesome tool. And I'm sitting here. Go ahead, David.
There's also a little movie on it, and you can Google it. It's called The Gentle Art of Blessing, and by James Joy, in reference to doing that. It's about a 7.5-minute video on YouTube.
Cool. Awesome. And we're down to about 8 or 9 minutes, and I'm sitting here, and I'm just getting a reminder from the sky of something. I'm actually sitting at Sam's Club, waiting to go in to get some things for the intensive, and there's been some rain here, and right in front of where I've stopped my van, I've parked in a place where I've got a little bit of shade. There's a water puddle, and the angle I have to be sitting at, there's a cloud. And this cloud, while I've been sitting here the last 5 minutes, has turned into about 4 different, very, very distinct faces. And the ridiculosity of thinking there's such a thing as a face. You know, we look at the cloud, and the cloud happens to be the right resonant frequency to cause our mind to produce something that we call a face. And, realizing that There's certainly no face in the puddle I'm looking at. There's certainly no face in the cloud that's reflecting in the puddle. The face must be an image in my mind. And as this cloud moves and whirls, the face changes. My mind changes. And, of course, if I leave the outside world to determine what my mind produces, if I leave the outside world to resonate in me, whatever's there, my mind will produce images based on what that resonates in me. You know, when I first looked at this face, it was a happy-looking, older man with a little bit of a bulbous nose, but looking very jolly. And so that resonated one set of images and feelings in me. And then as the cloud moved, and this to me is just a perfect analogy for what we're talking about, as the cloud moved, it turned into a very skeletal-looking face, and one that you might associate with an ad for a horror movie. So, where are the brain cells that would see the horror? Where are the brain cells that would see the happy face? They're inside of us. And when we recognize and own what's inside of us, and instead of trying to blame it on somebody else, we get the opportunity when there's some form of darkness to remove that darkness. And in removing the darkness, the only thing that's left is the light. And it is the light that eradicates the darkness. Nobody has ever invented a flash dark, that you turn it on and all the light goes out. But they have invented a flashlight. If you're in darkness and you turn it on, the darkness dissipates. Why? Because there's no darkness there. It's just an absence of light. And, that gentleman, Wild Bill, in the story that was just read from The Gentle Art of Blessing, was light in a place where everybody said, or, most everybody seemingly thought, well, there can only be darkness here. I have no power to bring anything else to bear. And the truth is, we always have the power to bring something else to bear on any situation. The willingness to do so is the key, and that willingness comes about as we dismantle or forgive the hostilities and fears that are stirred in us, and produce images of others as the problem in our lives, like someone else is causing what we're feeling, and someone else is the cause of the story that we're making up. And when I recognize and take responsibility, I can apply the tool of forgiveness and remove that hostility and fear and bring light to the situation. And interestingly enough, I'm now looking at the puddle I was talking about, and the face is totally, completely dissipated, disappeared. It's gone. All it is clear water. Perfect analogy, because our minds create all sorts of things. And the way you can tell whether you're creating something or it's actually happening is, what are you feeling? If you're feeling it, it belongs to you. Forgiveness is the way to change that. And if you have a question or a thought about that, we would love to hear from you. Our phone number is 646-200-4169. Also, if you're interested in really digging in and doing some deep work, some of you might remember Richard, who called in, he started calling in about probably 2.5 months ago. He made several calls and was listening in on the show. And maybe he's listening to us now, because I know he's driving across the country heading toward Heartland. He's heading here to begin the 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again intensive on Monday. He's actually going to drive into Springfield and pick a couple of young ladies up who are coming into the workshop and bring them down to Heartland. But if you're ready to do some work, we're going to have a very small, intense group. There's going to be lots of individual attention because of the size of the group. The economy seemingly being the way it is, not many people are traveling these days. And so we've got a very small group. If you're ready to jump in and do some major, major work, we're going to begin a 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And then if you want to deepen your understanding of the why principles, we'll do an additional 8 days, and that will turn into, those two workshops together will be a 17-day teacher training, and then we'll do a 16-day Laws of Living. So if you're ready to do some deep work, come and play with us. Tap in, call us, let us know you want to play, and we'd be delighted to hear from you and have you join us at Heartland.
Michael?
Yes, sweetie.
We have two people with their hand up. So first is area code 828. You're on the air.
Hi, this is Magda, and I did intend to put them. Hi.
Gee, we almost got that whole recipe, Magda.
Oh, say that again.
I say we almost got that whole recipe.
Oh no! You got a recipe, oh dear. I don't know what happened. I apologize for that. I'll have to be much more careful next time I listen. But I'm almost at my destination. I'm sorry. I've got a lag time here.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm almost at my destination, so I just have a moment to say how very, very much I appreciate your radio show. It is such a grand support, and I would encourage anyone who is even thinking about coming down for a workshop to do it. It'll be the best gift you've ever given yourself. And in addition to that, we will be there for the laws of living. Might be able to come a few days early for that, but up until then, things just there's too much going on that I won't be able to leave early. So
I understand.
So thank you again for your show. It's just tremendous, and I look forward to hearing you as often as I can before I see you.
Cool. Well, let everybody that you know that we're there, and the ongoing support is there for the work. We appreciate you, and we'll look forward to seeing both you and Chuck in just a couple of weeks for Laws of Living.
Wonderful. Looking forward to it. My love to both of you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And the other person has hung up, but if they'll call back in real quick, we have 3 minutes.
3 minutes if we've got another caller. Tim, David, closing thoughts. 2.5 minutes.
Are you there, David?
I am. Hello.
I'm here.
You, Tim.
Give us your closing thoughts, David.
Well, I'll leave it with what I always leave it with. Put the pen to the paper. You have to do your work. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to hear this, and if you've been inspired and you've agreed with something or disagreed with something, and something of it makes sense, then to me that's the opening that will allow you to then put the pen to the paper, go to the website, download it, and start putting this into effect. That's mine.
Awesome. Good input, David. Gracias. Glad to have you on the team. Glad to be on yours.
You're welcome.
Jeanie, do you have a closing thought?
No, but the caller has called back in, so we've just got a little over a minute. Area code 347, you're on the air. There's a lot of static, but 347, you're on.
Just penis.
Okay, turn that one off.
Children must play. Bless you, whoever you are. I hope you can get it into a space of connectedness and love and support rather than, we just hold you in a blessing, whoever you are, pardon me.
And know that our show on Monday will be coming live from Heartland, from the intensive.
Yes. It will.
And I just put a note in the chat room for everybody to hold a prayer for the group because the crew is so small. I'm in the kitchen, so pray for them to survive me in the kitchen.
Jeanie, cancel that thought. Well,
we're down to about 50 seconds.
Notice what you've created, Jeanie. You and your kitchen issues. Maybe this will be the final year for us.
All right, well,
I'm not laughing at that one.
Put the pen to the paper, put the tools to work, create the best year yet of your eternal life, and bring somebody with you on Monday to the show. Blessings. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.